Hey everyone, I'm back, and this is part one of my journey when I first became allergic, and I'm calling it In the Beginning. Now, in the beginning, when I had the allergy attack where I almost died, I was so terrified and knew that it was a food, but I didn't know which food at the time, that I refused to eat. There were 2 or 3 days where I wouldn't eat anything. I just drank water because I was too scared to put anything in my mouth. So I realized I was going to have to do something because I needed sustenance. So after a while, I determined to start doing an elimination diet. And the allergists usually tell you to do that just to verify that that food is what you're allergic to. Well, the biggest thing I knew was that there were 2 items that I was eating and drinking when I went into the allergic reaction and almost died. And I knew, and so what I did, I would try one for, I took a bite or 2, and I went into a reaction immediately. So I took care of that, and so then the item I was drinking, I tried it, went into another immediate reaction. So I knew these are 2 separate foods, but I knew that there had to be a common denominator. So at that time, I was so terrified, and while I was still processing how to find that common denominator, I decided I was going to have to eat. So on the elimination diet, what I would do is I would get one food, and I would eat that food for 2 or 3 days. And I would eat small portions, like 6 times a day, from morning until evening. And the only thing I drank was water and tea. That was it. I wouldn't touch anything else. And so I would write in a journal how I reacted to whatever it was I was eating for 2 or 3 days. Now, I found I did fine with grapes. I did fine with tomatoes, with onion. At the time, I thought I could eat carrots, but turns out that I developed an allergy to it after the corn allergy. So through it all, as scared as I was keeping sustenance in my body, but I totally eliminated all grains, all breads, anything to do with that. I realized after going through and reading the packages of everything that I had eaten and that I had reacted to, every one of them had a corn derivative. So I knew that I was going to have to get into the allergist right away and find out what was happening and what could be done. So I ended up, the foods I ate were all fresh produce, grass-fed beef, open range chicken, that they didn't give corn to, that kind of thing. And I found that I was doing really well with that. And I started, because I put my body into this elimination mode, I started losing weight, and in 3 months I lost 53 pounds. And basically it was like the doctor said, I was getting rid of all the toxins from all the corn that was in my system out. And when I did that, it really, really helped. But seeing him and being tested, and then finding out that not only was the corn a problem, I was allergic to carrots, I was allergic to watermelon. Those are foods that I absolutely love, but I could no longer eat them. So I had to make more adjustments. I love beef stew, but it's full of carrots. So I had to make an adjustment and redo a recipe for that, which I'm going to do tomorrow, so I'll videotape it for you guys. But It was so terrifying that I wouldn't go to a restaurant because I knew that the foods there had to be processed with corn. If I had to go into the hospital, I was just in trouble because all the food in the hospital is processed. They all have corn derivatives. I actually worked in the hospital there and could not eat the food. It was horrible. And so it was just something that for a long time I felt like I'm never going to be normal again. I'm never going to be able to enjoy sitting and eating with my family and eating with my friends like we used to do. So it was a process that for the first 5 years was the most difficult that I had ever encountered. And once I learned about, there was one allergy site at that time, and it was called cornallergy.com. Now I can't even find that site on the internet. And she had a derivative list because she dealt with a corn allergy. And she was one of the very few, like me, that even had that problem. So it was great to find this list and to know, okay, I can follow this list, I can read labels and see if I can eat. Now, my biggest weakness was always sweets, and I love getting like cheesecake or pecan pie or eclairs or cream donuts or something like that from the bakeries. I couldn't even go near a bakery. Candy was out. There was nothing that I could even touch. And so to get rid of all the sweets that I was so used to eating my whole life, it was very hard, very hard. But as I've shown you on some of my videos, I make the sweets myself. I still cannot go in and buy something in a store or in a bakery. What I learned to do those first few years was when I go shopping, I would go into the store. The minute I walked in, the smells from the bakery immediately hit me. And I learned to enjoy sweets by the smell, by just inhaling the aromas, and I was happy. I got to where I didn't even miss anything sweet. And I continued on with my fresh foods. I had to make my own mayonnaise out of canola oil or sunflower oil. Sunflower oil was my oil of choice when I was cooking. So I would order it from the health food store because you couldn't just go in a store and buy it. I learned to use the sea salt and get rid of the salt that had all the derivatives in it that were basically corn. I learned how to make my own baking powder at that time, and so that's where my video came from, making the baking soda and potato starch. And doing that, I've taught myself over time how to create what I need that is safe. And so, you know, I want to share with you guys right now just how hard it was. It was so scary. And if I went anywhere, like if I was going to be gone for the day or whatever, I would take fresh fruit with me that I could eat. I would take fresh vegetables that I could eat, just pack them in a cooler, and that's what I would take. As far as drinking anything, I was drinking water. Because it was to the point where even drinking milk, I would have a reaction because of the corn they fed to the dairy cows, and it would pass into their milk. And so when I would drink it, I would go into a reaction, and my blood pressure would bottom out so low that I'd almost pass out. So that it was a very difficult time. I remember all my friends couldn't even invite me over for a meal because they didn't know what to feed me. Everything they had was what you'd buy in the store that was processed. There were not companies making foods that did not have corn processing in it. That has evolved over time, where now you can find it more and more safe foods. Back then, no, you couldn't find anything. It was either you bought and ate what was there or go completely fresh route. That was it. And so I did the fresh route. I would hit the produce market twice a week, sometimes 3 times. It depended on what kind of vegetables and fruits I wanted. The meat market twice a week. I tried to keep as fresh as I could. And as I said, I would make, like, one of my favorites that I used to eat, so I would get protein, was I would take grass-fed ground beef, I would brown it, and then I would add like a tablespoon of sunflower oil and saute celery in it. And then I'd put the meat back in and then season the meat and add dill weed and just cook that till all the moisture was out. And that's what I ate. I would eat it in small, little tiny containers. And I would have that and have either my tea or my water. And I was satisfied. I got to where I didn't need much. And I lost so much weight in 3 months that my doctor got really scared because I was actually starting to lose my hair. I was looking very pale and very thin, and he was worried that I was starving myself. But when you can't eat, I mean, I couldn't even eat dairy at that time. Cheese, stuff like that. I was too terrified to touch it because a lot of it did have corn products in it. Now that's changed a lot over the years, which I have found and I've been very, very happy about. But it was a process. And like I said, the first 5 years, I was so scared that I was going to die, that I would ingest something and I would die and be there, and die by myself because my husband was on the road working, so he wasn't there with me. And so I'm just trying to help ones who have just found out or who have been struggling with this allergy to let you know you can get through it. I have. And as you can see, I'm doing quite well. Yes, I'm overweight, but that was because I had really, really bad knees. And now that I've got total knee replacements, that weight is slowly coming off. But I'm enjoying my life. This past 13 years, it's just been getting better and better. Back then, when I would get invited to someone's house, they would always ask me to bring something that I fixed so that I would be able to eat in case they didn't have a corn-free item. So they would usually tell me to bring 2 or 3 items. So I would make 2 or 3 dishes, and it was enough for everybody. And they got to where they enjoyed what I was sharing and seeing how it is that I was eating and trying to cope with this allergy and the other food allergies. So it is doable. It seems like it's not. I remember I would just cry because I felt like my whole life was just disintegrating. That everything that I knew, everything that I used to eat, everything I used to do was gone. And it was very, very rough. So now what I'm doing is trying to share with others my journey and how they can cope, they can get through this. It's so funny. People would look at me in the stores because I'd be going through and I'd just be hoping that they had changed ingredients on an item. So I would, as always, when I was in the store, I'd be reading my labels and looking at my list, and when I would see the corn derivative in it, I'd just toss it back in the shelf. And people would just look at me, and they'd either be in shock or they'd just laugh, because it was like, can't eat that still. And I would just, walk away. And so when I shop and I'd go up to the front, it was like, all this girl's got fresh fruits and vegetables and meat. That's it, because I just stayed away from so many things for so long until they started changing things. They still hadn't gotten to where it was super safe, but now, even today, it's way better than it was back then. It was just horrific. And you tell someone you were allergic to corn, they'd laugh at you. They'd think, oh, there's no way you could be. Yeah, there is. Your body, as the doctor told me, he said, your body is just so overloaded. It can't cope. Because as he told me, when there is corn in literally everything, he said normally, and this is true, because I grew up in a corn state and I know how we lived. We lived out in the country. We had a garden that we grew every year. We harvested and canned every year. Mom barely bought anything at the store unless it was sugar, flour, leavening, shortening, milk, and butter. That was about it. That was what she bought and would bring home. Everything we ate was canned or in the freezer, like the meat. And you would eat things, you wouldn't eat the same food every single day. Well, when you process everything in the world with corn, and you're eating, it's like he told me, he said, you're overloading your body because you're eating it every single day, all day long. And he said, that is why I reacted. He said, your body can't take it anymore. And so it made sense to me. And I said, yeah, that does make sense. And he said, it does. He said, because what you've done, he said, you've desensitized your body because of eating it constantly or drinking something with it in it constantly. He said, you're not letting your body get rid of that and recoup from it. So I said, okay, we can do this. I can get rid of all this. I can do this. And I have. It's just, I want to help someone who's going through this and let them know you can get through this. You can cope with it. It's not hopeless. And I really thought it was hopeless from the very beginning. It was like, if I accidentally eat something, I could die. And it was so terrifying to me that the next video I'm going to do is about the medications and about doctors. I wouldn't take anything, nothing, absolutely nothing. And so, it was learning how to cope with that, and I have. It took time. It took me years of figuring things out, redoing recipes, deciding what I could and could not have. I'd have friends invite me over that would call me and say, okay, Donna, this is what I'm going to fix. And they would read off the list of ingredients and the derivatives, and I would tell them whether or not I could have it. That was why they'd call me, because they wanted me there for a meal, but they didn't want to give me anything that could possibly cause me to go into an anaphylactic shock, which is so very loving on their part. So, it's just a matter of letting people know, of sharing with others. This is what I'm dealing with. I need help. And if you need help, ask for it from your allergist, from your doctor. Tell them what you're going through and have them help you to get over, to transition from that terrifying time time, because like I said, first 5 years were a nightmare for me. And there were times I wanted to just give up. I just didn't care. But then I got to where I said, no, you're not giving up. You've never been a quitter. You're not going to now. And I've had to deal with doctors like the allergist that told me he wanted me to eat it once a month to get my body used to it. I literally told the man he was an idiot. And I said, I will not be seeing you again. Now, the other allergist who told me about how corn had poisoned my body, he was a good doctor. But unfortunately, he was retiring. So I had to stop seeing him, and I wasn't going to go to any others. He had already helped me as much as I could be helped. The only thing he could do was give me prescriptions for an epinephrine pen, which now you can't even get them. They're so expensive, and insurance won't pay for them that I know of. They used to give them to me, and I would have to, now this is what is strange. I would get the epinephrine pens. They'd give me 2 pens, one for my purse and one to keep at home. Within 3 months, I would have to get new ones, simply for the fact they expire in 3 months. I just gave up on it. I said, I am so tired of this. I'm not doing this anymore. And I learned how to cope and control when I start to have an allergy attack. Now, normally, because I cleanse my body so much, if I start to have one, it's usually just my nose gunking up and swelling. And what I can usually do, because I have asthma, I use my nebulizer, and it's albuterol that I'm inhaling, so it takes care of it and helps me to cope with that. But I just gave up with the epinephrine pens. I thought, what's the point? You know, they expire after 3 months. I can't afford to be getting them every 3 months, especially when they went up to $700. So that was just one thing I finally gave up on, and I did that probably about 10 years ago. I just gave up having them because I said there was no point to it. But when you're going through all this, you figure it out. You will figure it out. And the good thing about now are there are others who have this allergy who can be of support to one another. I've seen different groups. I remember there was a woman that was on one group, and she was posting she was going to have surgery, and she was so terrified. And so I just told her what I have been through in that, and I will talk more about that in the next video. But when you've got others that are dealing with the same thing, you can help each other. You can talk to one another and see how you cope. And you know, I'm not some kind of invincible person. I'm just an ordinary person who has had to deal with this for so long that for me it's a normal way of life for me, and it will be for you too. So I'm going to let you guys go. I know I've been rattling on, but I want to be able to help someone else see. I was terrified. I went through this thinking there's no help. There's nothing you can do. No, there is nothing you can do about the food allergy, but there is something you can do to get your life back on track so that you do not have that allergen in your life and that you can cope with it. So until next time, guys, when I get the part 2 done up, we will talk to you soon. Bye.